Welcome to Glisso English. Real life stories.
What happens when one sibling has it all and the other is fighting just to survive? Welcome back. Today we're diving into a powerful story about family, pride, and the heavy expectations we carry into adulthood. Imagine sitting at a high-end restaurant with your family. On one side sits your sister, successful, secure, and holding everything together. On the other side sits you, struggling to pay rent, keeping a failing business on life support, and preparing to ask for the one thing you swore you never would, alone. In this story, we follow Julian and Maya as a single family dinner forces years of unspoken rivalry out into the open. But this isn't just a story, it's a masterclass in how native speakers navigate high-stakes, uncomfortable conversations in English. As you listen, pay close attention to how the characters use subtle expressions to express frustration, set boundaries, and defend their pride. Grab a notebook, clear your mind, and let's dive into Chapter 1. Julian stared at the red numbers glowing on his laptop screen. 3 unpaid supplier invoices, 2 overdue utility notices, and a bank balance that barely covered his weekly groceries. For the past 2 years, he had poured every ounce of his energy and savings into his boutique design agency. But passion didn't pay the rent, and the quiet fear of complete failure kept him awake every night. Across town, Maya adjusted her blazer in the floor-to-ceiling mirror of her high-rise office. As a senior corporate attorney, her life moved with calculated precision. Her calendar was color-coded, her clients were prestigious, and her financial security was ironclad. To their parents, Maya was the undisputed success story, the golden child who had followed the safe, lucrative path and won. Julian, on the other hand, felt like a ghost in his own family. Whenever their parents hosted dinners, the conversation invariably revolved around Maya's victories, her recent promotion, her new apartment, her upcoming vacation to Paris. Julian's struggles were politely ignored, treated as an embarrassing phase he would eventually outgrow. He closed the laptop with a heavy sigh and leaned back, rubbing his weary eyes. Tomorrow evening was his parents' 30th anniversary dinner at an upscale steakhouse downtown. He couldn't afford the taxi ride there, let alone his share of the lavish gift Maya had selected. More than that, he knew his bank account wouldn't survive another week without an emergency infusion of cash. Julian looked at his phone, hovering over Maya's name in his contacts. He needed help, but asking her meant surrendering the last piece of dignity he had left. The notification chime on Julian's phone shattered the heavy silence of his studio apartment. It was a group text from his mother sending a reminder about tomorrow night's dinner. She had attached a link to the steakhouse menu, accompanied by a string of excited emojis. Julian tapped the link and scrolled past $30 appetizers and $60 main courses. His stomach tightened into a hard knot as he calculated the inevitable damage to his bank account. Moments later, a private message popped up on his screen from his sister. "I already picked up the vintage wine set for Mom and Dad," the message read. "Your share is $200, so just transfer it to me whenever you can." Julian stared at the text, a dry laugh escaping his throat. $200 was precisely the amount standing between him and an overdrawn account. If he paid her for the gift, he wouldn't even have enough money to buy fuel for his car. He began typing a polite excuse to skip the anniversary dinner altogether. He could pretend to be sick or claim he had an urgent deadline for a major client, but deep down he knew missing his parents' 30th anniversary would hurt them deeply.
More than that, running away would only confirm the unspoken family narrative that he was unreliable. He deleted the draft message and set the phone face down on his desk. There was no easy escape from the situation, and time was running out fast. He had to make a choice between confessing his financial ruin or swallowing his pride. With trembling fingers, he picked up the phone again and began drafting a private message. "Hey, do you have a few minutes to talk before tomorrow?" he typed slowly.
The brass doors of the oak room swung open, ushering Julian into a world of low lighting, polished mahogany, and soft jazz. He pulled at his collar, acutely aware that his jacket was slightly faded at the elbows. At the corner booth, his family was already seated, their laughter echoing over crystal water glasses. Maya looked radiant, wearing an elegant cream-colored coat that probably cost more than Julian's monthly rent. "Look who finally made it," his father said with a broad smile, standing up to clap Julian on the shoulder. "We were just talking about Maya's latest corporate trial, Julian. Can you imagine that?" Julian forced a warm smile and sat down opposite his sister, avoiding direct eye contact. "That's incredible. Congrats," he offered, keeping his voice steady and polite. Maya gave a gracious nod, sipping her wine with calm composure. "It was just a standard contract dispute, but thank you," she said, setting her glass down precisely. "Anyway, how are things at your design studio, Julian? Are you still working out of that small, shared workspace?" The question was framed as innocent curiosity, but Julian felt the familiar sting beneath the surface. "We're expanding our client outreach," Julian answered carefully, adjusting his napkin under the table. "It's a tough market right now, but we're keeping our heads above water." His mother patted his hand consolingly, her expression laced with well-meaning pity. "Well, art and design have always been risky ventures, sweetheart," she remarked softly. "We just want you to have the same stability that your sister built for herself." Julian felt his jaw clench as the waiter arrived to hand out the leather-bound dinner menus. He glanced at the prices, realizing that every single choice on the page was a luxury he couldn't afford. The waiter placed a plate of seared scallops in front of Maya, followed by a delicate seafood tower for the rest of the table. Julian looked down at his glass of tap water, his appetite long gone despite the rich aromas filling the air. "We are just so proud of you, Maya," his father said, raising his wine glass for an informal toast. "To our daughter who proves that hard work and clear goals always yield real results." Maya smiled modestly, her eyes crinkling as she clinked her glasses against her parents. "Thanks, Dad, but it really comes down to focus and making smart sacrifices early on," she replied smoothly. Julian took a slow breath, feeling the sharp edge of her words slice straight through his remaining confidence. It was a line she had repeated since high school, a subtle reminder that his artistic path was merely a choice to be reckless. "Your brother works hard too, Arthur," his mother interjected gently, trying to soften the room's invisible tension. "It's just a completely different field, that's all." "Working hard is fine, Mom, but efficiency is what actually pays the bills," Maya countered, taking a small bite of her meal. "A business model needs to yield returns, otherwise it's just an expensive hobby." Julian felt the heat rise in his chest, his hands gripping the cloth napkin beneath the rim of the table. For years he had swallowed these casual humiliations to preserve the peace during holiday gatherings. He watched his parents nod in agreement with Maya, treating her cold analysis as wisdom rather than judgment. In their eyes, success was measured in salary figures, title upgrades, and high-rise apartments. His creative passion, long hours, and late-night dedication meant nothing without a substantial profit margin to show for it. He glanced at his sister's calm, composed face and realized the dynamic would never change on its own. If he wanted to survive the coming weeks, he would have to tear down his own pride right here in front of them. The waiter cleared the main dinner plates, leaving only small coffee cups and the lingering silence of a heavy meal. Julian's heart hammered against his ribs, every beat sounding like a ticking clock in his ears. He knew that if he let this moment pass, the opportunity would vanish along with his business. He cleared his throat, taking a quick sip of water to steady his trembling voice. "Before we order dessert, there's actually something important I need to talk about," Julian said, his voice cutting through the soft jazz music. His parents turned to him with curious expressions, while Maya set her espresso cup down with deliberate care. "My design firm is going through a critical transition right now. We have 2 massive client contracts coming in next month, but our cash flow is completely frozen." His father frowned slightly, setting his hands flat on the white tablecloth. "What are you saying, son?" his father asked, his tone shifting from light-hearted to cautious. Julian swallowed hard, forcing himself to look his sister directly in the eyes. "I need a short-term loan of $10,000 to cover immediate payroll and operational expenses," he said clearly. "And I'm asking you, Maya, because I know you have the capital and the financial understanding to help me bridge this gap." The table instantly fell into a suffocating, motionless silence. His mother gasped softly, her hand flying to her mouth in surprise. Maya didn't flinch, her cool gaze assessing Julian as if he were a client presenting a high-risk proposal. $10,000, Maya repeated, her voice perfectly level, carrying no warmth and no shock. "That is a substantial amount of money, Julian, especially for a company that hasn't turned a profit in 18 months. Julian's jaw tightened as Maya's cold evaluation hung over the table like a dark cloud. "It isn't a gift, Maya," Julian said, his voice quiet but sharp. "It's a loan, and I will pay back every single cent with interest." "With what money, Julian?" Maya asked, leaning forward and resting her elbows on the mahogany surface. "You've been promising a financial turnaround for 2 years, yet here we are at a celebration dinner discussing your debt." "Mom, please," their mother whispered, glancing nervously around the surrounding tables. "No, Mom, if he's asking for my money, then this is exactly the time," Maya replied without breaking eye contact with her brother. "I worked 80-hour weeks to earn what I have, while you treated business strategy like a passion project." "I put everything I had into building something of my own," Julian snapped, his restraint finally breaking. "Not all of us want to spend our lives hiding behind corporate safety nets and legal jargon." "Enough, both of you," their father barked, slamming his hand down lightly beside his plate. The sudden noise silenced the argument, leaving only the sound of clinking glass from the kitchen. Maya took a slow, deep breath, smoothing down the front of her blazer as her professional composure returned. "If I even consider this, it won't be a casual family favor," Maya said, her tone businesslike and rigid. "I will need full access to your company's financial records, bank statements, and client contracts by tomorrow morning." Julian stared at her, feeling a fresh wave of humiliation wash over him. "You want to audit my business?" he asked incredulously. "If my money is keeping your doors open, then I dictate the terms," Maya stated coldly. "Take it or leave it." Julian stared at his sister, the silence between them heavier than any argument they had ever had. He wanted nothing more than to stand up, walk out of the restaurant, and leave her offer on the table.
but the faces of his 2 employees flashed in his mind, along with the stack of unpaid bills waiting on his desk. "Fine," Julian said quietly, the word tasting like copper in his mouth. "I'll send you the records by 9 tomorrow morning." Maya gave a single crisp nod, as if confirming a transaction with a distant vendor. Their father let out a long sigh, signaling to the waiter for the final bill. "We don't need to discuss business any further tonight," his mother pleaded, her voice trembling slightly. "Let's just enjoy the rest of our evening." When the leather folder arrived at the table, Maya reached for it before her father could even touch the edge. She slid her black credit card into the slot with practiced ease, dismissing her father's polite protest with a wave of her hand. "It's taken care of, Dad. Consider it my gift to both of you for 30 years together." Julian watched the card disappear into the waiter's hands, feeling completely invisible in the shadow of her wealth. She had paid for the entire meal without a second thought, while he couldn't even afford his own entrance. When they finally stepped out into the cool night air, the farewells were brief and strained. Their parents offered awkward hugs, clearly eager to escape the suffocating tension between their children. When Maya walked toward the valet stand, she paused and looked back over her shoulder at Julian. "9 in the morning, Julian," she reminded him, her voice devoid of emotion.
Maya stepped into her silent apartment, kicking off her heels near the entryway. The panoramic view of the glowing city skyline stretched out before her, expansive and cold. She poured herself a glass of water and sat down at her kitchen island, staring into the dark reflection of the glass. Her mother's anxious voice from dinner still echoed in her mind, full of silent disappointment. Everyone assumed her success was effortless, built on luck and a path handed to her on a silver platter. They didn't see the 80-hour work weeks, the panic attacks in office restrooms, or the constant terror of falling short. Her parents had built their entire pride on her shoulders, turning her into a trophy to show off to neighbors and relatives. When Julian walked away from corporate security to start his agency, her parents had silently expected her to handle every family crisis. Maya opened her laptop, looking at the draft of a loan agreement template she had pulled up on her screen. She didn't want to humiliate her brother at the dinner table, but she knew his financial habits better than anyone. He operated purely on emotion and artistic passion, completely ignoring the harsh realities of cash flow and risk. If she simply handed him $10,000 without conditions, he would burn through it in 3 months and be back for more. She rubbed her temples, feeling the dull ache of a rising migraine behind her eyes. Holding Julian accountable wasn't about power or cruelty, it was the only way she knew how to protect him. She saved the draft contract to her desktop, typed a short message, and closed the laptop lid.
The aroma of freshly ground coffee filled the quiet corner cafe where Julian sat waiting. He'd spent the entire night organizing his spreadsheets, tax forms, and client proposals into neat, professional folders. When Maya walked through the door wearing a simple gray sweater instead of her formal suit, she looked tired. She sat down across from him, placing a thin paper folder onto the wooden table between them. "I reviewed the documents you emailed this morning," Maya began, her tone measured but surprisingly soft. Julian braced himself for a harsh critique, holding his breath as he waited for her verdict. "Your creative work is exceptional, Julian," she said quietly, looking directly into his eyes. "But your client billing structure is completely broken, and you're letting people pay you months late." Julian blinked in surprise, the defensive words dying in his throat as he listened to her. "I brought a structured loan agreement," Maya continued, sliding her folder across the table toward him. $10,000 at 0% interest with a 6-month grace period before payments begin."
Julian stared down at the crisp white pages of the legal contract, stunned by the generous terms. In exchange, you let me help you restructure your invoicing so this never happens again, she added. Julian looked up from the paper, seeing his sister clearly for the first time in years. "Why are you doing it like this?" Julian asked softly. "You were so tough on me last night." "Because last night, Dad was parading us around like competing trophies," Maya admitted, looking down at her hands. "I don't want to be your boss or your judge, Julian. I just want you to succeed so I don't have to worry about you."
Julian picked up a pen from the table, his fingers steady as he signed his name on the final line of the contract. He slid the document back across the table, feeling a weight lift from his shoulders that had been there for 2 years. "Thank you, Maya," he said, his voice sincere and free of the usual defensive edge. Maya took the signed paper, tucked it neatly into her folder, and offered a soft, genuine smile. "The wire transfer will hit your agency account within the hour," she said, leaning back in her chair. "Now, tell me about this new design client you've been working with, without the financial stress getting in the way." For the next hour, they didn't talk like rivals, nor did they play the roles their parents had written for them. Julian explained his vision for the agency, while Maya offered practical advice on negotiating better payment terms. They realized that success wasn't defined by high-rise offices or perfect stability, nor was failure defined by asking for help. When they finally stepped out of the cafe, the sun was shining bright over the busy city streets. They hugged each other, a real warm hug that dissolved years of quiet resentment and bitter misunderstanding. Julian walked back to his studio with a renewed sense of purpose, ready to rebuild his business on solid ground. He knew the road ahead would be challenging, but for the first time, he wasn't walking it alone. What a powerful shift between Julian and Maya. In the end, asking for help wasn't a sign of weakness, it was the bridge to mutual respect. Now, let's talk about the English in today's story. Notice how expressions like swallowing his pride, dictate the terms, and bridge the gap were used to navigate a high-stakes family conflict. These are natural, high-level phrases that will instantly elevate your conversational English when discussing real-life challenges. You can find the vocabulary of the story down below in the description box. I'd love to hear your thoughts down below. How would you have handled that dinner table conversation? Would you have accepted Maya's terms? Drop your comments, and if you found today's story helpful for your English journey, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for our next chapter. Keep practicing, keep listening, and I'll see you in the next story. Goodbye.